can go ahead. We can go ahead and call this meeting to order this evening, and we welcome you tonight to this special work session. We have a few folks on Zoom, and we have some candidates here with us in City Hall. So we're going to start tonight first with a little bit of a discussion and a briefing of moving forward. And so I'm presuming that Eric has some words of wisdom for us.
Madam Mayor and council members, so we have 7 interviews tonight. Of the, there have been 6 withdrawals since we met last week. So the list that you see on the schedule in front of you is the list of the 7 that remain, all for various different reasons. Some of those withdrawals happened. So these 7 candidates, 6 of which I believe are going to be in person tonight. 1 will be on Zoom, from what I understand. Again, we'll work through any issues. We have tentatively put in little 10-minute marks for everything, but obviously it's at the council's discretion how long you wish to take with each interview, and asked each candidate or applicant, excuse me, to address in their statement to you the 4 questions that were provided to them, which are also provided to you. So any follow-up or feedback on those questions you want to ask, feel free. We do have 3 positions on the Tiff Commission for you to appoint. It is the staff's hope that you would appoint tonight. We do feel it is time to move into the Tiff Commission meetings. We are prepared to have the commission meet next Wednesday night for their first meeting, should the council complete its work. But obviously that is your prerogative as a council. I think the other thing I would note is that the taxing districts do have to meet for that one other district, one other seat to make that appointment. And I would turn to a city attorney to make sure there is nothing, or city manager, that I've missed about our process tonight. I think everything is pretty self-explanatory, and it is the council's hope. We hope that the council will be able to make some decisions tonight so we can seat the commission.
So, yes, so your ultimate format is you're going to select 3. Then ultimately, when you all have had conversation, the way it would happen is that the mayor would then nominate and you as the council would then appoint. And that's per the charter.
So what is the specific criteria we should be looking for in a candidate?
So the charter doesn't really give you any instruction or direction in that regard. You understand that, of course, there will be a large contingent that's appointed by St. Louis County. They will cover a variety of things, but the individual markers, the individual characteristics or experience that you'd be looking for is something that either you individually or you as a council have to decide. Whether it's financial, whether it's real estate, whether it's commitment to the community, all of those things are things certainly I would expect that reasonably we would look for, but that's your call. The charter gives us no direction. The code gives us no direction on what those things should be. Doesn't have any mandatory minimums regarding educational background, age, experience. It doesn't even require that they live in Webster Groves. Okay, so you have the ability, and frankly, it's kind of a roving commission to decide what you want to do.
Okay, thank you.
But I would think that much of what we're looking for are people who know the material that they will be asked to evaluate.
So
And that includes an awful lot of financial information. And so someone should be able to understand taxes and financial information, I think, first and foremost.
Mayor and members, I would just add that obviously the criteria, or lack thereof, I should say, have been laid out. There is the financial component, but also add the community value component, right? That is important for the TIF process as well. This must be the blighted area concerns, that those are all things that formulate into the recommendation that the TIF Commission will make. So certainly understanding the ledger is necessary. It's a little different than just your basic household checkbook, but at the same point, there is a community value component as well to assess from my perspective, the past history with TIF as well as you look at members.
I agree with you, since we are talking about blighting and impact on the community. Agree. Anything else?
I would just think we would want a little breadth amongst the 3 that we pick as far as experience.
Each end of the spectrum, financial, community.
Right. Right.
So,
Professional experience in construction or developments, projects. Community
Laura, can you hear us?
But
Madam Mayor, if I can, just one quick technical note. Can we all, do you have a chance? Just make sure your green light is not on your microphone. That'll be important for Zoom tonight. I can hear most everyone, so I think they are, but just a reminder that the microphones are necessary.
okay. All right, and if we're done with our pre-briefing, we could start with interviewing our applicants for the position. Is Jean Brockland here?
Yes.
And Jean, we'd ask you to come on up to the stand here and use that microphone, and Eric will figure out how to make sure you're on Zoom. I think you might begin by telling us a little bit about yourself, and then we will launch into those 4 interview questions and anything else that we might have.
Sure. I've been gone for a month, so I'm not quite up on the masking situation in St. Louis. Is it permissible for me to take my mask down while doing this, or would you prefer that I keep it up? I can do whatever you want.
Keep it on.
I am a Webster resident. I have been since 1991. Also a practicing attorney. I've practiced since 1985. First 30 plus years with what essentially became my own firm downtown called Herzog Krebs, and ended up managing partner there for about 15 years. And so gained a lot of experience in budgets and as well as managing people in addition to practicing. In terms of my practice, it has been not a lot of real estate work, but some work for commercial real estate developers. Never anyone who had cause to apply for a TIF. It was more in Southern Illinois and greenfield work, but I think I got gained an understanding of the financial issues that developers face. So that's pretty much my background and general work experience. I did briefly serve on a TIF commission that Webster had. I want to say it was 20 years or so ago. Mayor might remember better than I. It never went very far. I don't think there was ever a proposal put forward, but we had 1 or 2 meetings with respect to a possible TIF proposal at the old, was it the Reliable Life building, or the building where Robust is, whatever that was called.
Yeah.
Anyway, so I think I have the appropriate background and experience to serve on the commission. I would like to, obviously. In terms of the 4 questions that were put forward, being number 1, being the key considerations that a TIF member will consider, I'd say it's, first and foremost is the project for which the TIF is proposed, does it meet the definition of blighted? Is it properly an appropriate project for a TIF at the outset? If it is an appropriate project for a TIF, then is a TIF necessary? Is it possible for the project to be done without a TIF? I think that's an important consideration. And if the belief is that it is appropriate for a TIF and that the project needs TIF financing to go forward, then I think there's probably a little bit of a balancing of factors that the commission members should take into consideration. Is it, because there is a short-term impact from TIF financing, and it does it's sort of a balancing in my mind. Is the long-term good worth the short-term pain, if you will? The second question was with respect to my goals as a TIF commission member. And I think it's simply to undertake a thorough analysis of the project and the applicability of TIF financing so that the commission can provide a well-reasoned and well-thought-out recommendation to City Council. You know, that's really my goal, and it's not to advocate a position for or against any particular project or any particular TIF. I would have an open mind and try to do that analysis and come up with a reasonable recommendation. In terms of my experience and insights, I've always, you know, maybe it's geeky, I've always been a little interested in urban planning and public financing, but I've never really pursued it as a career, if you will. The fourth question was, I wasn't quite sure what you were going for there, but in terms of considering public input and how I would respond to that. I know that, you know, the process contemplates public comment, and I think that I think that it is important to allow and to encourage public comment and to consider public comment. And I think it's important for the community that people be heard, that they feel that they are listened to, and that they have an opportunity to speak to the TIF commission with respect to the issues that are on their minds about a proposed TIF. So I think it's an important part of the process to consider that. I also think you sort of have to keep people on task. We would, you know, the TIF commission will be the TIF commission. It's not the planning commission. It's not the architectural review board. It's got a certain focus, and I think it's important to keep the focus on what it should be. But I also, and so I think it's important to air that all out. I also think that regardless, it's important for commission members to have their own mind and to reach their own conclusions. We're not there to take a vote of the public comments and make our recommendation accordingly. We're not there to read the letters for or against in the Webster Kirkwood Times and make a decision. We're there to consider the financial proposal, the development proposal, and to make a recommendation. So.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. I'll see if the council members have any additional questions that they might want to ask Eugene.
All right, two.
Sure.
Just going back to question number 4, and I believe you somewhat answered it, but so you'll be able to make a decision, recommendations to the TIF commission, to the council without having any public pressure. Right now, you know, there are those that don't want to see the development happen, and I'm sure you'll be flooded with those type of comments. So you'll leave those comments outside of your decision-making process?
I mean, I'll listen to them. You know, I'll hear anybody out. I'll talk to anybody who's got something that they want to say about it. But at the end of the day, I'm going to make my own decision as to what I think is the appropriate vote as my, you know, one vote on that commission.
Okay, great. And my second question, in your reason why do you want to serve, can you kind of elaborate for me? You say, I am also interested in sound tax policy.
Yeah, well, I mean, so getting to this development in particular, I would love to see Webster move forward in some way, and you know, I'm probably a bit of a pro-development person in general, but I have also over the years seen, not in Webster, but just from things I read and, you know, following the news, where I think that sometimes there are tax benefits or you know, things there's tax policy sometimes used in an unwise way, I think, I'm not saying in Webster Groves or even in St. Louis County particular, but I think there are times when there's just unwise decisions that are made policy-wise. So I think, there is an impact from a development that has TIF financing, and we as a city and as taxpayers in the city have to consider that. And so that's sort of what I think.
Thank you.
Anybody else? I have one question.
Sure.
Do you have any professional or personal relationship with any of the principals of SG Collaborative?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Closest I've come is, looking at their thing on their website. No.
Okay, thank you. All right, no other questions for Mr. Brocklin? And thank you very
All right.
much, Dean. We appreciate
Thank you.
your application, and we appreciate your coming forward and your interest.
Sure. Thank you. Take care.
Thank you. Thank you very much. All right, our second candidate this evening is Clark Hoteling. And Clark, if you would like to come up and talk about yourself a little bit.
Thank you, Mayor. As a literalist, I wrote out my statement, so I hope that's okay. Good evening. For those of you that don't know me personally, my name is Clark Hoteling, and I've lived in Webster Groves for 21 years after my wife and kids relocated here from Cincinnati with a job transfer. I want to thank you all tonight for all that you give to the city. I think public service is one of the most noble things in our society. I appreciate all that you do, and I look forward to being a part of that as well. And I want to thank you for the opportunity to serve on the commission for the TIF, for the West Pacific Avenue TIF District. I've been a very active member of our community in the years that we've lived here, but have yet to serve in a commission or in a role like this. The Douglas Hill project is potentially a very important addition to our community, but one that certainly comes with a multitude of challenges, obstacles, and objections. Each one of them must be thoroughly reviewed from multiple lenses to finally decide if it is right to move forward with this project or some form of it for Webster Groves today and into the foreseeable future. Those issues include, but are not limited to, density, floodplain issues, environmental, historical, eminent domain. Is it right for our character of our community and our vision for Webster Groves, affordable housing, and of course, the use of TIF, why we're here tonight. The outcome must be determined to be good for our community as a whole, not for an individual, not for special interests, and not just for the developer, but really needs to be for the overall good of our community and our citizens. The TIF Commission needs to totally understand every aspect of the project from start to end. They need to assess if the area is truly blighted. We need to understand the floodplain issues and the issues that come along with the law. My understanding is the law is changing on January 1st about TIFs and floodplains. So we have to understand, is that something that we want to really look at? We really need to drill into the financial cost benefit analysis for the TIF for this project, consider how our school district's going to be impacted financially, and determine if there are any other benefits that our city initiatives that this TIF approval could do to help with any other city initiatives. Can it assist with that? So my reasoning for applying to the commission is to apply my passion, my skills, and my expertise in a way to serve Webster Groves. The very best commissions or boards that I've been a part of have a wide variety of people with different backgrounds and experiences to bring to the table. These have been the very best ones and have the best chance of ending with a positive recommendation. I bring to the table my past experience as a president of a $20 million business located in Maplewood. while I was responsible for the sales, I was very much in tune with our financials, the good, the bad, and the ugly. And my work since 1985 has been related to development. While our company focuses on the interiors of a project, I'm involved in all kinds of government and office developments from conception to move in. I'm not trained in finance, but I consider myself a very good generalist, exposed to all parts of a project. I'm a very good listener. I pride myself in objectiveness, and I feel I'm a good critical thinker. I love learning what I don't know and applying what I learned to actions. But finally, I know this project has a lot of interest and energy around it, both for the project and against. I view my role as a TIF Commission member to listen to all of it, to be understanding, try not to be swayed by the loudest person in the room, weigh all the pros and cons, and use my expertise to recommend to City Council what I believe is in the best interest to Webster Groves and the Webster Groves community members, based on an analysis of the facts, the research, and the best practices of other projects similar projects in other communities. So that's sort of my opening statement, why I'm here, and would love to answer any questions that you might have.
Could we ask you the specific interview questions?
Sure.
If you want to start, well, I guess I have them here. So question number one is, what do you believe are the key considerations a member of the TIF Commission should reflect on to inform a recommendation to the City Council?
I think that the three key things really are understanding, as I said, the scope of the project, really understanding the finances, the cost benefit analysis now into the future, the impact, how is that additional infrastructure going to impact us down the road? How does it affect our fire department and our police department? All those things are really important. And then the third part is it really fulfilling the city's objectives? I know you had in the RFP process, you had a pretty clear objective of what you were looking for from a developer to come back with. Has that changed over time? Is this project really meeting the city's objectives?
So our second question is, what goals do you hope to accomplish as a member of the TIF Commission?
You know, I was talking to Paul over here. He said, have you ever been on a TIF commission? I'm like, oh my God, it's been on my bucket list my whole life. Not really. I never thought of being on a TIF commission. I'm excited. I actually am really excited about the opportunity, but it really to be thoughtful, really what Jean said, I think is what my goals would be, is to be very thoughtful, very thorough, and very impartial.
All right, number three, describe your experience and insight on the financial and development matters that a member will evaluate on the TIF Commission. Tell us a little bit more about your experience level.
You know, I think the areas that really relate to finance, I think I heard you, Mayor, say earlier that that's something really important. I think, you know, being the president of a company, a $20 million company, had a lot of financial understanding how the financials affected the day-to-day and the long-term success of our company. I was also on the vestry of our church for 6 years, which is a fiduciary responsibility for the finances of the church as well as the foundation. So lots of financial reports, lots of understanding there. On my alumni board of trustees for 6 years, lots of financial, it's Ohio Wesleyan University where I went. And then several nonprofits that I've either been advisor or on the board for. So a lot of financial, I guess, background. And again, no formal training, but I think I'm a pretty good generalist.
Okay, and then the fourth question is, how will you bear the public's interest in making recommendations as it relates to your own knowledge, experience, and expertise?
You know, that one's really tough. I mean, this is a interesting time in our country's history. I just, my oldest son was at a city council meeting in Columbia, Missouri tonight. He just sent me the videos, and there's, you know, mask policy, but 40 people in back, you know, protesting the mask mandate. We've seen, if you read the paper, the Kirkwood Development Plan Commission meeting had a similar type of event with a development project there with a lot of heated, people's passions right now are very strong. And I think it's going to take a lot of us to try to get the noise out of the way and to really look at the facts and to really look at what the goals of this community are, to wade through that. And I think I can do it. I've personally stopped watching cable news because that just gets my blood pressure up, and it doesn't matter what side you're on, you're just reinforcing what you believe. I don't think that's healthy. So I'm working on things on myself to try to get me out of that, trying to get out of the Facebook commenting world and out of that. So I think trying to get the noise to understanding it, where people's pains are and what they're interested in, but trying not to get caught up in it. So I think I'm a pretty good testament to being able to handle that.
Any council members have a question for Mr. Hotelling?
I think I heard the answer. I just want to ask the question again, as I've asked Gene. Clark, can you tell me that how you will handle that public pressure that will be coming at the TIF commission during the process of the pros and the cons, and how you use that information to make your decisions, to make recommendations to the council?
You know, I think that in all the emotions, there's things to be heard in it. I think it's best is how to react to it. I think I'm really, I think I'm pretty good at reacting to, you know, high emotional charged, you know, people that are really care about something. I think it's going to take a lot of discipline. I think I have been saying for several months that you guys, I mean, I'm like, oh my God. I mean, it's not, you know, I think ultimately everyone wants what's best for Webster Groves. Now we might have different ways of approaching that, but that's all of our goal. And I think we need to understand that, peel back the really charged feelings, listening to it. What are we talking about? Making sure we're addressing it, and then coming to a decision. I mean, no one, believe me, whatever choice is made at the end, everyone won't be happy. It's just not going to be the case. And I think for me, what's important to me, and I've been to every single town hall and plan commission just to really understand the project. I haven't come to a decision on whether I think it's right or not. And I think being part of this will really help me get more details about the TIF part of it, whether that's appropriate or not. Can this really go, does it really have to have the TIF as part of it to go forward? And if it really does, is it really what we want? I haven't come to those decisions yet.
Thank you.
Thank you. Well, and ask my question again, do you have any professional or personal relationship with any of the principals of SG Collaborative?
None whatsoever.
Thank you. All right, thank you very much, Mr.
Thank you,
Hotelling,
guys.
for
Thank you,
coming
Clark.
forward and applying for this. And we will continue along. We have next Mr. Driven, Paul Driven, who is going to come forward and do the same thing. Tell us a little bit about himself and answer our questions.
Thank you, Madam Mayor and council members. And I just wanted to start out by thanking you all for your public service. I know how difficult it can be, and you know, when you put in a lot of hours and you're all very dedicated. So I really, I know you rarely hear good things, but you should be proud of what you're doing. My name is Paul Driven. We've lived, our family, my wife, and we raised two children here. We lived here for 26 years. The kids have gone through the school system, had got an excellent education. And now my daughter and son-in-law and two grandsons live here. So we've got a real tie to the community. We love it very much. And that's really my purpose in requesting to be a member of the TIF Commission. In talking about well, let me talk, I'll go a little bit out of order. If I don't cover everything, please follow. I've got very extensive experience in this field. I worked for HUD for over 30 years in the field of affordable housing, and in that role, was actually involved in the financing of many multifamily apartments, the management of them, and sometimes those projects involved TIF, sometimes, most of the time they didn't, but they were both new construction and rehabilitation, and I did that. And then for about 15 years, I had a consulting business where, again, I advised developers on financing opportunities and finance multifamily housing packages, and did analysis for communities on approaches to to housing. So I think I've had really good experience. And equally important is that as part of that process in a federal agency or a public agency, we interacted with the public a lot. We didn't just do things in a vacuum. And I've been involved in a lot of public meetings where I've both presented and been an observer. And as you all well know, those meetings are not always friendly. And I've always felt I've handled myself well, and it would apply to this as well as my professional career. And I used to lecture our staff about this, that I never took it personally. And, I walked out of the room, I might be tired, but I didn't say, Mr. Smith doesn't like me, or I messed up, or something like that. A lot of it is people are playing roles. And so having said that, a goal of mine with this process would be that to the extent possible, and I know it's not gonna, probably happen to the way we all want, but to the extent possible, that the public be satisfied that at least the process is totally fair, totally above board, totally ethical, intelligent, and knowing that there's going to be some people, no matter what we do, that won't agree. And that's really all at the end of the day any of us could do. I don't regard, as a TIF commissioner, I would not regard my role, of course, as policy making. It's simply to enforce the requirements of the TIF process, which to me are, relatively straightforward, which is to hold a public hearing or hearings or communicate in whatever way we see fit with the public, and to thoroughly analyze the documents, the numbers, the physical development, every aspect of this to the nth degree, and come up with a sound conclusion. Again, in my work, I'm used to analyzing pro formas, prepared pro formas, looked at tax increment financing, looked at tax abatement, that sort of thing, dealt with blighted areas. But at the end of the day, I guess I want to say my experience in public forums is perhaps as important as being able to read the numbers, because you could probably program a computer to do the numbers, but the human side of it is critical. So that's where I'm coming from. Try to think if there's anything else. I would say I've been an advocate for multifamily housing through the years because I believe it's an important tool for a community to have. And I believe in theory, Webster Groves needs more of it. But at the same time, it doesn't mean I'm stuck on this project or that this project would make sense. I would not let my kind of philosophy guide me in that direction. The TIF has to make sense. The whole project has to make sense in its own right. It's a very complicated project. There's a lot of potential, pitfalls ahead. The numbers are going to change a lot. There could be concern that costs will go up. It's going to be a heck of a tough thing to explain to the public. And I see that as a critical part of our job in the public hearings. So that's generally what I had to say. I hope if I didn't cover all the 4 questions, then I will, if you have any further. 4 questions is a little bit like a Passover Seder. Nobody gets that. Okay.
So let's go to those questions and make sure that the council is comfortable that you've answered them. Number 1 is, what do you believe are the key considerations a member of the TIF commission should reflect on to inform a recommendation to the council?
Well, as I, number 1 is to be fair and really, and make sure we follow to the letter the requirements of the TIF process is spelled out in the statute, which I see as, to hold public meetings and to make a recommendation to the council on the proposal, taking into light. That sounds easy, but the second part of it, like I said, is analyzing in detail a very complicated development with lots of numbers and lots of cost projections and lots of development issues. And so that's what I see as our key responsibility.
All right, the second question was, what goals do you hope to accomplish as a member of the TIF commission? I know you talked about your goal being that the public be satisfied with the process. Is there anything else there that you want?
Well, that the main goal being that, as I said, that the process be excellent, that it be totally above board, that it be totally unbiased, thorough, professional. And, part of me hopefully says that if we do that, it will satisfy the public, at least maybe a little bit. But again, that's really all we can do. It's not, the TIF commission needs to, the members need to stick to what the ordinance says we need to do, not get into extraneous issues.
All right, then number 3 was describe your experience and insight on the financial and development matters that a member will evaluate on the TIF commission. Do you think you covered that thoroughly by describing your work with HUD?
Yes, and as a consultant.
As a consultant, okay. And finally, the 4th one, how will you bear the public's interest in making recommendations as it relates to your own knowledge, experience, and expertise? Do you think
As the 2 gentlemen before me said, I think I'm pretty much in agreement that I would want to very heavily weigh public input and make sure go to whatever length was reasonable to get that input. On the other hand, our job is to recommend what's professionally the best for the city of Webster Groves, and not to necessarily listen to the loudest voices and loudest screaming. And that's what we need to do. So I think we need to listen to the public. We need to communicate as well as we can. We need to be patient. But in the end, we still need to make a professional decision, which some members of the public may not like.
Okay, does the council have any questions Emerson, do you think you want to ask? a
Yes, I
question
have
again?
one more. Just a comment in your experience and qualifications that piqued my interest. You just given a quick example. You say you have reviewed and revised developer proposal for years.
Yes.
Can you tell me what that was all about, or?
Well, when we were at HUD, developers would come into proposal with us for proposals all the time for financing, and we would sit down and, crunch the numbers and go through it and oftentimes make revisions. So that was my role in leading that effort. As a consultant, I often work with developers to develop development proposals and revise them and that sort of thing.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Then I'll end with my question. Do you have any professional or personal relationship with any of the principals of SG Collaborative?
No,
All right.
thank you.
Thank you very much,
Thank you.
Mr. Driven. We appreciate your application and coming forward.
Thank you.
Boy, are we on time. Look at this.
Mayor, your next one is on Zoom. And
Yes, our next one is on Zoom, and that's Paul Reitz. And Paul, we're going to pull you up, and I don't know if you've listened, so.
Paul, you should be able to unmute and turn your camera on. Paul, I've unmuted you. You're ready to go. If you can turn your camera on.
Okay.
Join us.
Can you see me with my camera right now? Or
We
no?
cannot see you, but we can hear you.
Okay, hold on a second here.
Good. I'll turn the volume.
There it is. Now can you see me?
We can. Yes.
Thank you. First of all, I just want to say, apparently I should have shown up like everyone else, so I apologize for that. I enjoy being able to talk where you can see my face. So that was kind of my preference for this. It may not be appropriate, but that's what I did. So my name's Paul Reitz. I have been a 25+ year resident of Webster Groves. I actually grew up as a child here, moved away, moved back to Webster Groves. So I've been around for a while. I come at this from a little bit different perspective. I'm an engineer, a civil engineer who does a lot of development oriented work like this, primarily not for the development side, but for like regulatory clients, infrastructure, that kind of work. I also happen to be a certified floodplain manager, which I know there's a floodplain component to this that you want to talk about. My firm has also designed things for the Great River Greenway District. So there's a lot of components of this project that I have firsthand experience and understanding with. As I know the mayor knows, I was on another side of that, I was the chairman of the Planning and Zoning Commission for 4 years between 2004 and 2007. So I have had some significant amount of experience working in the public sector, running, not that I want to run this meeting by any means, but being responsible for running public engagement sessions in the past. And I was on the Sustainability Commission back then as well. So my interest in this is really more from, as I said, the objective feasibility side of things. From a financial standpoint, having run my company for the last 30 years, I have had to meet budgets, run numbers. We do a lot of cost estimating in the work we do on a day-to-day basis. So we have a pretty good understanding of what those numbers should be or what those costs are. On top of that, I have an MBA, so I have a financial background with my MBA. So with that, I think one of the key things that I'd like to maybe address in regard to the commission, your 4 questions, and I'm not going to address them directly if you don't mind, but I look at the TIF commission maybe a little bit differently in that in my opinion, it is not the commission's responsibility in any way, shape, or form to decide what the scope of this project should be. That's the responsibility of the Planning and Zoning Commission. That's the responsibility of the City Council. Our job is merely, once you get to the point where you have a scope of project that you all are looking forward to, does whatever financial assistance the developer is looking for, does it make sense for long-term for the city of Webster Groves? So to some extent, the whole concept of getting the public's input into the scope of the project, to me, is outside of the TIF Commission's purview. And we need to stay in our lane as a commission. That said, certainly there's going to be a lot of interest. There already is a lot of interest in this project, and people need to be heard. We need to understand people's concerns and positions with regard to this development. But at the same time, our job as a commission is really to look at the financial aspects based upon the scope of work presented to us. And that may be different, but that's a difficult thing to separate, but I do believe as the TIF Commission, that's our responsibility.
Paul, if I may,
Yes.
isn't the financial aspect of this part and parcel of the scope of the project?
The scope drives the financial side of it, right? So the scope of the project is the scope of the project. That has been determined by somebody else, but that will set the financial aspects, i.e. the cost of the project, right? So then the question becomes, from a feasibility standpoint, does whatever public assistance, TIF, whatever kind of financial assistance the developer is looking for from the city, is that reasonable and appropriate?
But
And
this
is it
TIF
in the
commission
best
will
interest-
decide not only if a TIF is appropriate, but the amount of the TIF,
Exactly.
which goes into the scope of the project, correct?
Yes, but it's not our job to determine the scope of the project, is my point. That is a planning and zoning function, a city council function, not a TIF function.
I gotcha. Thank you.
Okay. So that's that. If that makes sense, does that make sense?
It does. Thank you.
Okay. So with that, I mean, if you want to ask me specific questions, I'd be more than happy to answer them, or if you want me to just to try to answer them as we go, I can do that too. Again, I think I probably answered number one, which is, to me, it's our job to understand the scope of the development, the feasibility of that scope, and the cost of that scope, and as a result, what kind of public assistance is necessary, if any. With regard to the my goals, again, I think what's important here is it's not our job to, as a TIF Commission member, to decide whether the project is right for the city. That's your project. Our job is to decide financially whether it's a viable request that they're asking for, and whether financially it's in the best interest of the city with whatever public assistance is brought forward. And similarly, when that goes then a little bit towards the public input, yes, we need to hear and understand everybody's input, but in the end, this is really more of a financial objective decision with regard to the amount of TIF, if any, required for the scope of the project, which is still being developed.
Well, I had one question.
Yeah.
In your application here, it says that you want to make sure that it's accomplished in a manner that positively impacts the community. Can you expand on how you determine whether a project such as this will positively impact the community? Like, how do you determine that? Is that based off of citizen input? And in other words, I guess what I'm trying to get at is, it seems like whether it positively impacts the community kind of goes into the scope of the project, doesn't it?
It does, and I probably misstated that to some extent. My concern, do I believe that Webster Groves needs to do something with that area? Absolutely, I do. I'll tell you that unequivocally. The question is, what is that you need to do? And again, that is a question that is really ultimately up to you as the city, as the elected officials of the city. My job, or the TIF Commission's job, is to decide financially, does it make sense for the city and for the residents of the city?
Gotcha. Thank you.
Um,
Well, just one quick question.
Yes.
Paul wanted to know, before making the commitment, a better understanding of the time commitment he need to make. Neil, Marie, Eric, can you guys answer that for him?
Absolutely. Mayor and council members and Mr. Wrights, the time commitment we're looking at is likely, there's one meeting a month on our draft calendar, but of course the TIF Commission will decide this between now and November, and then likely an optional meeting in September and October to add onto that if the commission determines they need more meetings. They may want to continue the public hearing to a second session, those types of events. So I would anticipate the meeting should be 1 to 2 hours, but obviously the public hearing would probably be longer, for that one evening. We are looking at Wednesday evenings in those periods, again, in the council chambers here, and also will be available by Zoom. So hopefully that answered the question between time and sort of logistics.
That does. I'm still fully employed running a company, and I just needed to make sure you were looking for more time than that. That's not an issue. So, okay, thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions? And I will ask mine. Do you have any professional or personal relationship with any of the principals of SG Collaborative?
Being in a similar industry, I have known who Larry Chapman is, and I've known Larry for probably 30 years, 25, 30 years. Professionally, we are not engaged by him. He does sit on the board of the Earth City Levy District, of which we do the engineering work for the Earth City Levy District, but that's a very tangential relationship. He certainly doesn't control things to where in any way it's going to influence any decision I might have.
Thank you. Are there any other questions?
I have none.
All right, Paul, thank you
Okay.
very
you.
much for applying for this and for your past service to the community also. We really appreciate what you've done.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Paul.
All right. We're moving on to Kyle Wilson.
Someone might have left their phone here.
That was yours. It was a gift.
Yeah.
I just wanted to say good evening. My name is Kyle Wilson, and I appreciate the opportunity to interview on the city commission. I would start out by saying that I do support the project as a conceptual project. I'm a big fan of development. I think single family, but also need more housing options, certainly more apartments and mixed use. I think the only thing that can make it better is if the Metro link left through.
I'm sorry to interrupt, but I'm having a hard time hearing.
Hang on.
Maybe adjust the microphone. Thank you.
No, you should be on, so.
Okay.
Or can you hear him?
All right. So anyway, however, my support for the project does not mean that I am applying for one of these seats in order to give a rubber stamp to any sort of public subsidies to make this a reality. I think the key consideration of a member of the TIF Commission is best summed up by the idiom, is the juice worth the squeeze? Right? We're going to give something up and what are we getting back in return? Will we, the city of Webster Groves, experience a net positive benefit to our community by diverting those future tax revenues to fund a portion of this project. If the city does indeed subsidize the development, we in effect become another investor in that project, and rightfully deserve some kind of return above and beyond the capital that we put in. Examples of potential returns to be evaluated are things like the growth in the number of residents, butts in the seats, people spending money living here in our community. An increased daytime population through the office uses, shopping, going to lunch, spending money in our community who don't necessarily live in our community. More retail storefronts that can attract more shoppers from across the region. And then also the potential to reach any affordable housing goals the city might have. Tiff can be a lever to help developers see the light to provide some affordable housing. And honestly, oftentimes affordable housing has to be subsidized in order for it to work financially for a developer. So we've kind of got that carrot and stick thing going on there through the commission. I find it strange, the question of a goal. I don't know that I have a goal. I just want to be a steward for my community by using my professional experience to ensure that any of these subsidies that might be granted would be a net benefit. I've lived in Webster Groves for 6 years. I laugh hearing how long everybody else has lived here, but this is actually the longest I've lived in any place in my life. My wife and I made a major investment. We designed and built our own home in Tuxedo Groves about 5 years ago. Since 2017, I volunteered on the Architecture Review Board here in Webster Groves. Before I had a child, I did it every 2 weeks, and now I'm an alternate, and I miss everybody. It's probably why I want to do this now, get involved more again. Let's see here. Most importantly, I also have a 2-year-old son. In 2 weeks, he will start at the Amber Early Childhood Center, and he'll be attending Webster Groves Public Schools from kindergarten to his graduation, which, if you can do the math, is the duration of, or beyond, or less than duration of this TIF. So I have a personal investment in caring what happens and how money is allocated to support development in our community. The professional experience that I have that I believe qualifies me for this, I'm a commercial and residential architect with over 17 years of experience in the architecture and construction industry. I'm very passionate about urban planning and development policy. I spend a lot of time reading about development in other cities. I get to travel to other parts of the United States for my job, so I get to see development patterns in other cities that are growing. I think I'm passionate about that, and I see what challenges are solved and what challenges are not. I have worked on multiple projects across the country that have received some sort of public subsidy, most often tax abatement, not necessarily TIF, but a similar funding vehicle. The most relevant comparable project that I would share is I was part of the development team for 212 Clayton. I was the architect of record and designer. It's a 26-story apartment tower, a very contentious project in the city of Clayton. Sat through many contentious meetings. That project was granted or they applied for a 50% 20-year tax abatement. Developers stood up in front of a group just like yourselves and said, we can't do this project without this tax abatement. They went to litigation. They ended up settling for a 20% 20-year tax abatement. So the deal still happened despite standing up and saying it couldn't happen without it. I don't share that story as kind of a scare tactic to say that I'm skeptical of everything that a developer may propose, but I think it's important that we separate the hyperbole from the reality. A static pro forma can often be very rosy, and oftentimes a best case scenario. And what you really need is more of a fluid pro forma where you can evaluate and change different variables to see potential worst case scenarios. Like, this is a very long development timeline we're talking about here. The risk gets greater the further we go out into further phases, and understanding how they've projected those costs and they've created this world in the spreadsheet. It's important to understand that, dive into it, challenge different scenarios that may affect us economically, and see if how things still work, and understand if what we're proposing or what they're requesting is right for our community. In addition to my professional experience, I earned an MBA with honors from Webster University in 2012. In 2018, I got a Fundamentals of Economic Development certificate from UMSL. It's a non-credit course around economic and community development concepts and tools to attract, assess, and support development and redevelopment opportunities in our communities. The coursework very much applied to the topics that we will be discussing and evaluating on the TIF Commission. I also participate in a program called Urban Plan that teaches real estate development concepts and pro forma modeling to high school students and public officials. So if anyone is interested in that program, we do that here in town. I understand what the but-for analysis entails. I understand how an internal rate of return is derived. I understand how to read a pro forma. I have experience on similar projects, and I understand construction costs in the current market. I actually currently work at a construction company. I don't practice that much as an architect anymore, except as doing houses on the side. But I am working with developers often on multifamily projects similar to this, as well as other industrial type projects. I understand where the risks are for a project like this. Having been involved in enough deals, I understand the typical returns that developers are looking for. And I also understand that the St. Louis region pays an extra about 100 basis points in risk premium when looking for capital from other places, because large institutional investors don't see us as a necessarily as good a risk for their money as they might get in a larger growth city. So when you hear things that people say that it's hard to generate investment here, or investors want higher rates of return, that's not necessarily untrue. And I've experienced that professionally. Webster Groves is my hometown now. I plan to live here for a very long time. The decisions and recommendations of the commission will impact my family, my neighbors, my community. I believe it's imperative that the development team be transparent and work with the TIF Commission, treat us as an investor in their project. And anyone else that would be in the capital stack would expect a return greater than what they put in. And I think we as a city would deserve that in granting it to them if we so choose. So thank you very much. If I didn't answer your questions, I will be glad to answer anything else.
I have no question.
Can I ask one? Do you have any concerns about time commitment with knowing that you have a young child to care for at home?
No, I'll be all right. He's good. It's a lot better now. He's 2.5. So, and also too, I mean, with his bedtime, it's not too hard to get out of the house. My wife won't be hanging too bad. So.
Let me ask you, do you have any professional or personal relationship with any of the principals of SG Collaborative?
I do not have any professional or personal relationships. I have in the past worked with Green Street probably over 5 years ago as an architect pursuing developer deals. My former employer, who I left 3 years ago, was just acquired by Green Street. But someone gave me a good piece of advice a long time ago: give yourself permission not to care. So I haven't really kept up too much there. But full disclosure, that's about the extent of it.
Right. Well, thank you.
Mayor, may I ask?
Yes, Laura has a question.
Thank you. And it may be the audio was not great, but I thought I heard you say that you supported the project. And I'm wondering about impartiality, and maybe you clarified that, but could you revisit that question for me?
Yes, absolutely. I like the idea of the project in general. I think that there should be more housing options. I was a supporter of the changes that you made to the zoning code. I thought it was fantastic. I was really bummed out to see it repealed. I think that mixed use, dense urban developments are good for communities. I think mixed use, dense urban developments are good for the environment. They have a lower impact from a global warming perspective. When I talk about going to other cities and seeing how they develop, I think that it's important to understand that you can't stop the way development happens. It's natural. Like, people want to live in Webster Groves. That's why we have the problem now. But on the flip side of that, people want to put their money into Webster Groves. Obviously, this developer is interested in Webster Groves. There's an opportunity to make money here. And so that's what the but-for analysis is. Like I said, I have a lot on the line here. I haven't lived here for decades, but I'd like to. And I don't want to see a decision that I make personally by participating negatively impact my community and where I live and affect, the investments that I've made here as well. So that's where I go back to say my experience leads me to be able to sift through the details, sift through forma, challenge a lot of the assumptions, try to create certain risk scenarios. Again, a performa that they provide is going to be a very rosy picture. It's going to look really great for them. They might try to make it look really good for the city. And I think the TIF commission has a duty to try to poke holes in that. But ultimately, if we can evaluate that there is, like I said, a net benefit to the community, and it doesn't necessarily have to be completely financial. Again, I mean, when you talk about affordable housing goals, if we have the opportunity to use TIF as a lever to achieve certain things that we want in our community, then we should be able to quantify that, but it may not necessarily be a dollar amount. It may just be a goal for equity that we might have. So those are bigger, larger conversations that would happen as part of the TIF commission. But I don't feel like I would have an issue being impartial to it. I'm open-minded and I'm curious to see the numbers.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, Kyle.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for coming forward. We appreciate your interest and we appreciate your work on the architecture review board.
Yeah, I appreciate your time. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, our next candidate is Bill Fogerty, and Bill, I think you know the drill here by now. You've been sitting back there and it's probably.
Thank you, Mayor Welsh. My name is Bill Fogerty. I've lived here for 51 years in Webster. And I appreciate the chance to apply for this commission. I'm a semi-retired physician. I have prepared answers to the 4 questions and I'll just read through them if that's okay. You. My 3 key considerations: the effect of any TIF on the financial stability of the city. Any investment in the development should not have long-term negative consequences for the city, the school district, or other entities that are funded by the property tax. Secondly, the development should be designed to benefit the city, its businesses, and its citizens. And thirdly, the funds generated by any TIF should be used for the development of infrastructure to make the development feasible and not for the development itself. My goals as a member of the commission: I hope to see to it that the process is fair to the city, the various other entities that will be affected, and to the developer. Secondly, any amount of the TIF that is granted should be in keeping with the goals outlined above, especially that the amount is no more than is necessary to make the development feasible and to support affordable housing should that be a part of the project. Experience and insight on matters to be evaluated. I've read all the publicly available materials on the city website related to the development, and I feel I have a good understanding of the requests that will be considered. In addition, I've over the last several years read about the TIF process as it relates to property I own that might be eligible for TIF to encourage development. I've also considered the pros and cons of TIF from the viewpoint of governmental entities and the property owners. With regard to the public's interest, my main concern is that the TIF, about the TIF, is its unintended consequences of tax revenue diversion on the financial stability of the city, the school district, the library district, and other entities that derive revenue from the property tax. The developmental strategy study on this question looked at the effect on the Webster Grove School District and it concluded that it would not be adversely affected and that the impact on the city would be minimal. That question should be explored in depth by the commission. I have no prior involvement in TIF decisions, but have served as president of a large professional group and at several nonprofit boards, including one that I serve on now currently as treasurer. Those experiences have given me some knowledge of the financing of entities and the need for a long-term view of financial stability. I believe this knowledge will serve me well on the TIF commission and aid me in making sound decisions regarding the granting of TIF for this development.
Right. Thank you very much for answering the questions, and we'll see if council members have something else they'd like to add. Emerson?
No question.
No questions, Sarah?
Dr. Fogerty, with your professional experience, how would that apply to the development matters here in the TIF Commission?
Well, while I was president of my group, we built a large building over in Shrewsbury, 40,000 square foot professional office space. I was involved in the design of that, dealing with contractors and architects and on, and was responsible for the financing of that and the building of it. So I feel I have some minor background in that field. I also have been on a number of boards and have had to deal with financial issues there. And I'm currently the treasurer of a nonprofit organization, have been for the last several years. So I'm used to looking at numbers.
Dr. Fogerty, you by far have the longest tenure here in Webster Groves. And that's a wonderful thing, but it allows you to be privy to a lot of change that has occurred in Webster Groves.
For sure.
And I don't know if I really have a question to follow up that. I just find that interesting because so far what we get is 20, 30-year residents, and
Yeah.
you have seen change in Webster Groves, and
Right.
you've seen the good and the bad.
I do have a feeling about that. The day we moved into Webster in 1970, the little newspaper came on. We just sat down on the front step, just exhausted moving in. There was an obituary in there and it said, Mr. So-and-so, though not a native of Webster, had lived here for 75 years. So I figured, you're not included if you're not a native. So even 51 years is just trivial.
Well, let me ask you, Dr. Fogerty, do you have any professional or personal relationship with any of the principals of SG Collaborative?
No, I don't.
Anybody else? Well, thank you.
Just one last comment about the availability. I am available anytime except next Wednesday through Sunday. We'll be out of town for a wedding. Other than that, I'll be available.
Thank you. Thank you for all you do, and we appreciate it. All right. And then we have Brian Murphy. Mr. Murphy, can you come forward and tell us about yourself and why you applied?
Yes, last but not least, correct?
Exactly.
All right, we'll make this quick, and I appreciate the opportunity to be here and to interview for this TIF commission. This obviously, as we've talked and as you've talked, I came in a few minutes late. This opportunity and this redevelopment is significant within the history of Webster Groves, and I'm very grateful for having been selected to this point to represent my community in this potential commission. My wife and three, soon to be 4 daughters, are current residents of Webster Groves. In fact, we live 300 yards the way the crow flies from the redevelopment zone, and we love the area. It's where we want to be, and it's why we're here. We're both lifelong residents of St. Louis. We moved to Webster Groves in actually 2013. We quickly outgrew our first home as our family began to grow, and we were fortunate enough to be able to move into our current home in 2018. Unfortunately, when we acquired our current home, it was in pretty rough shape, and even more so once we started to get in there and tear down walls and stuff. And it required a significant amount of personal time, money. The investment was significant, but we are still committed to those costs today, even with our growing family of 3 and soon to be 4 daughters, staying here just because we feel that Webster Groves is this premier place to live, work, and raise a family. I think, I don't have any direct experience with development. I've got a little bit of capital experience and work projects and stuff within my professional life, but our own personal investment within our home and us trying to kind of grind out this, house that we're hoping to grow into is indicative of what I think we want to continue to see within the future of Webster Groves, and that's strategic, thoughtful, meaningful investments. I really look forward to providing my thoughts potentially and strategic insights into and experiences within the commission for a place and part in me and my family's lives that we care very deeply for. So with that, I'm more than happy to answer any questions. I know I didn't go into too great detail, but more than happy to kind of elaborate as well.
Well, then let's ask you the 4 questions and you can elaborate.
Sure, yeah.
on those. Okay.
Perfect.
All right. And the first one is, what do you believe are the key considerations a member of the TIF commission should reflect on in making a recommendation?
Yeah, so again, I don't have the development or zoning experience, but I think from my perspective, obviously a resident that lives close to the proximity of this redevelopment zone, I think ensuring all of those short-term, long-term risk rewards. Obviously, I've got a little bit to learn in terms of some of the different documentation, kind of the way that the financials work, but I'm looking forward to really seeing how this could potentially impact me and my neighbors' daily lives, as well as our long-term investment within the community. I think that's the biggest impact for me, is just really kind of taking a holistic approach, open-minded approach. I think investment within Webster is critical for the future growth to continue that vision and that mission, but we just have to make sure that it's a strategic and thoughtful plan that can actually be executed according to what the developers say.
So we'll go to number 2. What goals do you hope to accomplish as a member of the TIF commission?
Yeah, again, I think, and this is kind of, again, it's from my perspective, me and my family, we want to stay in Webster. We want to see it continue to grow. And I think that the biggest part is, how can I help bring my experiences and my insights within my professional life? I'm a national sales and operations manager for one of the St. Louis's top privately held companies. And I have a lot of experience with local and national companies and international companies. I've worked on different federal and local contracts, US government contracts as well. And I think just how I can help, utilize my experiences and learnings and my financial wherewithal with different contract negotiations and agreements and some of those past experiences to really benefit my community and help, make, again, Webster the place to be in the future. So, yeah.
So we'll go to number 3. Describe your experience and insight on financial and development matters that you would use.
Sure. Yeah, again, I don't have the direct government or, zoning type TIF funding experience, but I do, like I said, I've got a myriad of different financial and strategic insights within my company, and dealing with some of these larger companies and entities and kind of seeing how some different negotiation and contracts and stuff play out. I've had my feet held to the fire quite a few times and dealing with some of these different companies, and even more so here within the past 12, 18 months with the pandemic. We've done a lot of stuff with government entities and USDA and local food banks and stuff. So having the strategic insights of getting things executed, especially in this stressful time of the pandemic, it's been really, I think, beneficial to help kind of, groom me for a potential civic duty like this. And in all those dealings too, it's me and my team, and we've got a great team back at the office, but that whole financial package is what we've been a part of, and to help sustainably grow our company. And again, that's what I look to, bring to the TIF commission as well.
And then our 4th one is, how will you bear the public interest in making recommendations as it relates to your knowledge, experience, and expertise?
Yeah, again, I think I said it once, I'm trying to come in with an open mind. I think, redevelopment and growth within Webster is critical, but it has to be done, properly and accordingly. And as we get into numbers and kind of see where developers are, portraying stuff, again, with living in such close proximity to the development, I've gone through a lot of the documentation stuff, how it could potentially impact my, my daily lives and my neighbors' daily lives and, long-term investments, but really, what's in the detail. And I think that's what I'm more so really interested in to actually see how this could potentially even impact it further for the long term. So, my hope, again, I've said it a couple of times, Webster is a place that me and my family want to continue to be, and I believe there's a delicate balance, between investment and the historical legacy part of Webster Groves. And I think that's critical going into this conversation, understand, how is that TIF going to be allocated or potentially could impact other parts of our community as well too. So just trying to keep an open mind going into it.
Thank you. Anybody have a question for Ryan? So I'll ask mine. Do you have a professional or personal relationship with any of the professionals of SG Collaborative?
No.
Great. All right. Well, thank you very much,
you.
Ryan, for coming
Ryan.
and your
Appreciate it. Thank you.
interest in this. And
you.
Thank you.
we appreciate it. Thank you. All right. Did you have something you wanted to add?
I do not. Thank you for the opportunity.
Maybe we take a
Okay,
break.
yes, we may take a break. Let's do that. Let's take a few minute break and then we'll come back and take a look at our candidates here and figure out who we are going to recommend.
I do want to compliment on her dramatic lighting.
Yeah, I feel like she's part of the documentary.
I thought I was watching like PBS.
Yes, I thought that too. I was like, I hope she's filming something else after this.
I really thought that was really nicely done.
Well, we have to ask her how she achieved that.
Yeah.
We should all
Well,
strive
the
for such
dramatic black
lighting.
background.
She's got one of those halo lights.
Yeah,
She just has it.
it worked.
Laura, are you with us? Not yet.
Not yet.
Yes.
There she is.
Well, I think what we're going to do is have each council member identify their top 3 candidates. And then we'll go back and we'll talk through maybe some changes or whatever, but at least we'll get a list of some of the top candidates that are here. And so why don't we start with Laura? You can talk about your top 3 and why you chose the person you chose.
So I wasn't quite prepared for this particular way to go forward. So I may actually go with more than 3, but I'll try not to. How about that? I do think Paul Driven has a load of experience that lends itself to the analysis that we need to have.
Who is
done.
that?
All driven.
I think that Mr. Wright has a very good experience. I don't know the degree to which I should or am troubled by his experience or his relationship with Larry Chapman. It seems like it's a social rather than professional one, perhaps. But I do want, to make sure that we acknowledge that. Sorry, I'm trying to read my own handwriting now. I think Mr. Wilson has a lot of excellent experience, but one thing that I forgot to ask him is, and I guess did I hear him say he's an alternate on the ARB right now rather than a regular member?
Right. Mhm.
Okay. So I would keep him in the list as well. I mean, frankly, I guess I should have started out with this, and I'll say it because I'm sure it's true for all of us, that we are once again in Webster Groves have the difficult choice of having the benefit of more really good candidates than we can actually place on the commission, which is a good problem to have, but it is actually a problem. I also do think Mr. Murphy provides the young family and somebody who's geographically close to the site makes for a good perspective as well. And I guess I'll stop there for right now because I frankly could say nice things about every single person on this list.
Yeah, I know. Okay, great. So who wants to go next? David Franklin does.
So as I've advocated since my time on this council, I think it's most apropos now more than ever due to the disparate impact that this TIF would have on people of my generation and younger. As a result, I think not only do their qualities and their character suffice to be appointed to the board, but their age does. So as a result, my top 2 would be Kyle Wilson and Ryan Murphy. And not to let anyone off the hook here, I think the perspective of Dr. Fogerty being a 51-year resident would be an unbelievable addition to the board. So those are my 3 votes.
Okay. Pam?
Well, I'm going to just kind of look at this in the order of time on how we saw everybody. And so my first choice based on who we saw would be Clark Coatailing. I liked the breadth of his understanding of the project. I thought he had a very good answer as far as being autonomous and disciplined. It seems like he's practicing that in his, in his everyday life, and I think that will benefit the commission, his experience running the company as well, and the whole idea of being a generalist is appealing. The next on the list would be Kyle, based on his experience and his perspective, multiple perspectives. I like his national experience, what he's seen, and how we would apply that to our community. And then I do like Ryan as well for that reason. Again, he will be here for a long time after we are, maybe not, but just as far as his view is a little longer than some of those of us who may move on sooner.
Karen, you want to go next?
Yes. This is pretty tough because, I mean, I'm sitting here and listening to these gentlemen and I just felt that there was just a lot of good experience in here. I really like Paul Driven.
Council member, could I just ask you to pull your microphone down a little bit so we can make sure?
I really liked, well, my top three that I have are Clark, Hotel, and Kyle, and Ryan Murphy. I really like the
I'm sorry, Karen, I didn't hear your second name.
Kyle and Ryan.
Kyle and Ryan, Clark Hotel. I like too, the idea of his scope as or no formal training, but as an excellent generalist, as well as really needing to dig into the cost benefit analysis of the TIF. I just get an objective and very grounded feeling from that. What I really like about both Kyle and Ryan Murphy was really the energy and the opinion around growth and development, but also the need to make sure that the numbers make sense, that the whole idea of the program, but that it makes sense, not just growth for or just a development for development's sake, but one that's going to be beneficial from a financial perspective. Those are my three.
Sarah?
Sure. My three would be Kyle, Clark, and my third, I was having kind of a toss up. But I think Kyle brings a lot of knowledge and experience from his work, but also from the Architectural Review Board, and has kind of shown that willingness to serve before, which I appreciated. I appreciate Clark's involvement in the community and the ways in which he's choosing to involve himself. I think this was kind of right in that vein, and I appreciate kind of what he brings of community knowledge to the conversation. For the third spot, I do really appreciate Paul Driven's experience and expertise, but I also really appreciate the perspective that Ryan Murphy brings, and the being near the development site matters to me, and the fact that I think that will matter to the public is important as well. And outside of that, I also think he would be a great addition to the conversation. So I'm cheating and giving you 4.
Emerson?
Okay, well, my top three is Clark Holding, Paul Durbin, and Kyle Wilson. I think Kyle Wilson brings a lot of experience to the table. The 17 years experience as an architect, and Paul, the same thing with experience in financing multifamily apartments and management of apartments and working communities, develop housing, things of that nature. So I think his experience would be a big benefit. And then that's Clark. I think he's a community ingredient that we need to have on the TIF commission. And that's pretty much how I looked at a community. We have a kind of a senior and we have a youth in that category representing.
Mine are going to be a little bit different because I was looking for people who understood the finances, had a little bit of TIF experience. And so I like Gene Brockland because he came with a lot of TIF experience. Paul Wrights, I thought, came also with experience as a planning commission member on the Sustainability Commission. He is involved in all of the pieces that come along with the TIF Commission. And I thought those two came to me with experience, and I thought that was important. And then my third person was someone who would come with more of a community piece. So I'm thinking two people who with experience and one person who brought that community experience. And Kyle and Ryan both come with that, but I chose Ryan. I think because he's right there and lives there, and he fit that profile for me. So those were mine, but I'm going to argue for somebody who has had some experience on a TIF commission who I think could serve us well.
Can I speak to that a little, just
Yes.
as a kind of what, maybe a different way of thinking about that? To me, I feel like the fact that Webster Groves only gets 3 true community appointees means maybe they all are meant to be community minded, and the finance and expertise and TIF experience is really coming from the county appointees, because they're the ones who go through this process kind of on a regular basis and have, so I wasn't necessarily looking for that experience to come from the Webster Groves appointees, because I feel like we have such a limited list that we're allowed to appoint, that what we bring, what matters most to me that's represented there is Webster Groves, and not necessarily the financial and TIF experience.
And what's important to me too is also Webster Groves, but when you sit down and you're talking about tax revenue, and you're talking about, I can see Kyle shaking his head when you're talking about tax revenue, and you're talking about the costs that the city might have to face as a consequence of a TIF and what the size of it is. You want someone who is here in our community, who understands those numbers here for us. And that's why I think it's really critical to have someone like perhaps Paul Wrights on the commission, and then whatever. I would argue for 2, but I would certainly argue that we at least need one person who really gets it.
When you say gets it, Mayor, what are you speaking of?
I'm talking about someone who would understand. Here you with Paul, you have Wrights, you have a civil engineer. He's a certified floodplain manager. He's had a lot of experiences. He has an MBA. He runs his own company. He understands the role of a TIF commission. And so I just think that piece is absolutely critical for us. So I'm going to argue for Paul.
So can I make an observation? You have a lot of names in common, right? So for instance, we have Laura has Wilson, David has Wilson, Pam has Wilson, Karen has Wilson, Sarah has Wilson,
Right,
Emerson has Wilson. You've got 6 there.
right.
Murphy is
5.
5, right? So, again, 5 if you, depends on how you count Sarah's. 4.5 maybe. So again, perhaps what you're doing now is narrowing it down, and I would suggest that might be one way to do it, but it's obviously yours to call. But you've got a pretty good declaration there, so.
Yes.
I think one of the seats is pretty well spoken for. I think the question then becomes the other 2.
Well, that's
One
up to the
option.
council actually to determine whether it's well spoken or
understand.
not. We're going to do another vote on that. Thanks, Neil.
Could I add just one more thing to the conversation?
Yes, please.
So I do understand the whole engineering background, but I do think Kyle covers that, and he's got the Webster interest at heart as well. I do see that the TIF and the finance experience coming from the county as well. I guess that's how I looked at it. So I don't know that previous TIF commission experience would trump in Webster Groves would trump or be more important than what we're getting from the county.
I don't know that someone from the county necessarily understands our particular tax structure. I mean, you get someone from Public Works who is coming from the county and on this commission. Do they really understand what it means to be a pool city? Do they understand the difference between an A city and a B city? Do they understand how all of the sales taxes that are collected affect the various pools that we have in the city for sales taxes? Do they know about our utility taxes and how that changes? I mean, those are so many pieces that we have that I think is absolutely critical that someone understand that.
Well, as far as I understand, Kyle does understand that.
And he may get all of that. But
To me, Gene is out of the question to the
Yes.
extent that he served on the TIF commission 20 years ago. To the best of my knowledge, disappeared and now has come up
Yeah,
again
I see
to
that.
get on a TIF commission. I appreciate his, and I like Mr. Brockland, but I don't think that he's appropriate for this TIF. In regards to Paul, the only thing that concerned me, I appreciate the experience that he has. He was tripping over himself in answering the questions as to who controls scope, who controls finances. And I don't know if he really has it parsed out in his mind what the true duties of this commission are. And I'm not saying that I necessarily do either, but he was so adamant that this is just about finances. And then all of a sudden, nope, it's also about what the community wants and what's best for it. It's like, well, which one is it? To me, it's like, you got to make up your mind and not just go with the wind. That's the only thing that concerned me about Paul. I'm not sure he really understands what he wants to do on this commission or what he envisions his role to be on this commission.
But which Paul was that?
Paul writes.
Right.
Okay.
Okay. I mean, this is the good discussion that we're having. It's important to hear this.
Pretty much what David mentioned, how I arrived at Durban versus Rice.
Say that again.
I think based on in the comments in your conversation there, I had Paul Wrights and Paul Durbin as my top four, and that's how I eliminated one or the other, and I eliminated Paul Wrights.
Okay, so, I mean, I'm willing to, obviously, if I am outvoted by you guys, it's fine. This is not first time, so.
So going back to.
But I really am concerned about getting somebody on that commission who gets the financial part of all of this.
Well, I guess going back to
Jerry,
Sarah's.
are we the only municipality that hits those different buckets? I mean, the financial experience that's being provided by the county. I mean, there's other municipalities other than Webster that's a pooling city, that those things that is
Right.
Webster that unique that those things don't apply to any other municipalities that might bring that type of experience, that might result in that type of experience coming from the county appointees?
I don't know I don't know where the county appointees are coming from. We don't know if they have financial experience or not. We don't know if they're coming from Public Works or where they're coming from. My concern here with the TIF commission is that we have someone on the TIF commission that gets all of the tax structure of this community. And we just don't have someone on the TIF commission with that kind of background.
Well, we do have the CFO from the school district. She's part of the TIF commission. And we have David Addison. He will be on the TIF commission, and David is an actuary. So I know he live and breathe those numbers. So I don't think we'll be on the commission without someone understanding the financial background.
And when I Googled the 6 appointees from the county exec, I have no personal experience with any of them. I follow Jay Nelson on Twitter just because he used to be in the working for someone in the state house, but they all come from a different department. And effectively what it seems like the county exec is doing is pulling from the 6 major departments within the county exec
Okay,
office. One was from transportation, one was from economic development. I think one was from like community outreach, stuff like that. So they're all coming from different perspectives, and that's what it seems like Sam Page was doing. You know, these are the same 6 people that he appoints to everything, I think. Every TIF commission in St. Louis County.
and Laura, we haven't heard from you.
Yeah, I do want, on this issue of experience, I do want to hear from Eric, perhaps, or I'm not quite sure. I think Eric's the right person. To what degree are we as a city in supporting the TIF Commission going to provide some of this background and analysis in terms of what our tax structure is and what this impact will be outside of the pro forma itself?
So, Madam Mayor and members, to your question, Councilwoman, we will certainly provide whatever the TIF Commission asks for, but in general, TIF commissions are dealing in the property tax structure. And I'm looking at Laura here, but I'll look at everyone. So we are looking at not a very, to be quite honest with you, across all of our funds, not a large line item of our budget. And I just want to be very blunt. It has been probably the most stagnant piece of revenue we have. And that doesn't mean anything bad or good, but the reality is from a city perspective, because this is really going to hit school and the counties and the special districts, which is a concern of why Old Webster as a district has a nominee and the library board as well to parse through. Their districts will be touched much larger than the city's financial impact. So we will provide property tax information. If there is a SID request that affects sales tax or payments that comes through, that will certainly be provided as well once we have that. And that will be involved with pro forma, gone through development strategies. The school district will have a very big say, obviously, in where property taxes go. And that is really the biggest player in terms of the increment and the planning. To be quite honest for you all and for the public, we have not made in the city's revenue projections any indication that revenue is going to go up in that space because the amount of property tax there, we have not made any plans. So if a TIF were to be implemented, it does not negatively impact future projections of the city for our property tax lines because simply we have had no viable development slated in that space. So we have not altered our projections in any way. This would be our first actual altering of those projections for this if we were to put this in. If anyone didn't understand that, I'm happy to walk through it. But the reality is, Ms. Frazier from the school system will represent probably the largest impacted entity and certainly knows down to the pennies and nickels and dimes and all the laws and rules, all those issues of their tax structure that will be affected.
So if I could follow up just for a minute, you referenced a SID, and you might say for the public's benefit what that is, but also does that come specifically under the jurisdiction of the TIF Commission?
So a SID is a separate tax entity, a community improvement district, I believe. I'm looking over at Neil. I'm using other state terminologies in my head and trying to make sure I get it right for Missouri. But Neil, as I understand it in this state, it is not the TIF Commission's jurisdiction. Is that
Right,
correct?
that's
It is
correct.
part of the package. The TIF would make a recommendation on the property tax. The council would have to deal with the TIF recommendation and the SID as it comes in the whole package. And then to speak to the fiscal impact and negative impact, as we have mentioned many times, that is also part of the third piece, which is the redevelopment agreement and providing the fiscal clawbacks and such and the protections for the city and all the taxing districts. If things go south, how do we make sure to provide the clawbacks and the protection? All of that I just talked about is not the TIF Commission's at all. That is all in the redevelopment agreement, which is the council's jurisdiction.
I concur.
So I just Googled everyone, just so the record's okay. Paul is a Post-Dispatch reporter.
Yes.
Kevin is an Express Scripts employee. Jay Nelson is the county execs boards and commissions liaison. Miss Roberts is the head of transformation department there. Miss Streeter is head of transportation. And then Trimble is the planning manager in St. Louis County.
I'm not sure. Are you sure those first two are up to date? I'm not sure. I think they work within the structure of county government now.
Oh, do they now?
Well,
They're all-
Hempel does now. He works for them, but he was a Post-Dispatch reporter for years, and he's now on, I think, on their PR communication staff.
it is quite, just to the staff, as we've mentioned before, it is quite common to see TIF commissions predominantly dominated by staff, given some of the nature of their roles. And certainly where I come from, almost all the TIF commissions were, but it is predominant to see counties do that.
Okay.
So did someone mention earlier that these individuals are consistently appointed to work on the TIFs across the metropolitan area?
Within the county executive makes the same 6 appointments to all the TIF commissions.
So then is it safe to say then that they would have had exposure and experience to these same questions, numbers, decisions across the metropolitan area in the various municipalities where they may have similar or dissimilar structures as we have?
It would be safe to say, in my opinion.
But we are clear that we have 3 spots.
We have 3 spots.
And Kyle Wilson was the favorite. For every
We have-
council member.
We have Kyle, Ryan, and we have 4 votes for Mr. Hoteling.
So we can put one down as Kyle.
Yes, we could certainly,
So do we need to vote on individually?
Yes, and just to meet with the charter, what needs to happen is if you have an agreement, I would suggest the mayor make that nomination and then you vote on it.
that's right, the mayor gets to make the nomination.
That's right.
So if the mayor decides.
Right.
I
This could
could
be
be
a-
cantankerous.
This could be a
tonight.
really long night.
Can we talk about one thing? Because I am concerned that you feel like we aren't getting the right experience, the financial experience. And it's needs to
okay.
come from Paul when I'm seeing Kyle having the same credentials. They both have MBAs. They're both certified and licensed in their fields. They're both from Webster Groves. So to me, Kyle fulfills that concern that you have.
And I agree with you.
Okay.
As we talk about it, I think he does come with that kind of experience. And I think that would be, I think you're right.
Okay.
So if we can include Kyle. Our second one is Ryan Murphy. He has 5 votes.
Murphy.
Mr. Murphy has 5 votes. And he didn't get mine, but he would get mine now. And it looks like Mr. Hoteling.
I can live with those 3.
What is Mr. Hoteling bringing that Kyle and Ryan don't bring?
Say it again, David.
What would Mr. Hoteling be bringing that Kyle and Ryan wouldn't be bringing?
Like there's a community that needs to be there.
What do you mean by that? I don't think I fully
He's been
understand.
active in the community. He's been
He's
active
very active.
on this particular subject matter as far as the development. Been in every meeting, every conference or whatever it is. So, and he is, he has a very, what's the word I'm looking for? Dedicated.
It depends on which side of the aisle you're on as to how dedicated that perspective is. I mean, I'm
His,
recipient of nasty.
for me, his comments and his how he present himself is a very balanced and logical and strategic thinking person.
And I also think that there's a lot to be said about being present, over time to the different zoning commissions, the planning commissions, to actually learn and be aware of what's, even from a very, I would say, a balanced perspective, to just the knowledge of what's going on with the city and taking the time to learn that over time, to be present, to learn, to hear what the zoning commission's doing, the planning commission and the city council and all of that. And that's been over time with him consistently.
It is amazing in a way that he's been around for this long and not served officially before.
Is there a reason? Like, I mean, that kind of, now that you say that, that kind of gives me pause. Is there a reason why he hasn't?
Well, it doesn't give me pause. It to me is the idea of learning and being present and learning and listening, and then, you know, feeling like you have the capacity and the knowledge to help without, you know, you have a broad experience.
Yeah, I feel like the counter argument could be he's yelling from the cheap seats, but doesn't want to get in the driver's seat.
Not when you hear him speak. He talks about what can we learn. He said as we were sitting here, you know, listening and what would we be learning through the process, getting the noise out of the way.
I'm not against him. I'm just
So
trying to
I
figure
know,
out.
but I wrote some phrases down that. you know,
Thoughtful, thorough, and
He did
insightful.
say, he did say, even though he has listened to everything, he has not yet made a decision.
So if I might, I've actually been fairly quiet on Clark because I think you all know that we have our families have very close personal relationships. So I didn't want to be too vocal on this. You know, you can be community engagement doesn't have to come through city government all the time. And there are ways in which he has been consistently engaged in our community for his time here. And I think, to be honest, a good deal of that came through his church. And he exercised real leadership in his church community. And for those of us who spend time on that can be all consuming, and it's harder to get out and do some of the other things that you might want to also do.
That's good to know. I appreciate it, Lori. Thank you.
Okay, so are we in agreement about these three individuals? Mr. Hoteling,
Read them.
Wilson, and Murphy?
Say it again.
Mr. Hoteling, Wilson, and Murphy?
I'm good with those three.
So
So what I would suggest, Mayor, is that on a 1-by-1, you make the nomination, we look for a second, and then we take a roll call vote.
all right, nominate Kyle Wilson to the TIF Commission.
Second.
Mayor Welch,
Yes.
Councilmember Arnold,
Yes.
Councilmember Bliss,
Yes.
Councilmember Franklin,
Yes.
Councilmember Smith,
Yes.
Councilmember Alexander,
Yes.
Councilmember Richardson.
Yes.
All right, Kyle Wilson, there you go. I'd like to nominate Ryan Murphy.
Second.
Councilmember Arnold,
Yes.
Councilmember Bliss,
Yes.
Councilmember Franklin,
Yes.
Councilmember Smith,
Yes.
Councilmember Alexander,
Yes.
Councilmember Richardson,
Yes.
Mayor Welch.
Yes. All right. In deference to the rest of the council, I would like to nominate Clark Hoteling.
Second.
Councilmember Bliss,
Yes.
Councilmember Franklin,
Yes.
Councilmember Smith,
Yes.
Councilmember Alexander,
Yes.
Councilmember Richardson.
Yes.
Mayor Welch,
Yeah.
Councilmember Arnold.
Yes.
He's been so nasty to me.
Mayor,
All right.
you're
The
lying.
man has been so nasty.
But you're lying on.
All right. I think that's it. And we have nothing else, correct? We have
That's
no
correct.
closed
That's it.
session tonight.
Special session.
Just, Mayor, if I may, just for announcement for the public on TIF Commission, we will get the notice out to members, but we will plan for next Wednesday night at 6 o'clock for our first TIF Commission meeting.
All right.
Those are open to the public.
They are open to the public, yes.
It'll be in person and on Zoom.
Can I, before we go, I want to congratulate Councilperson Arnold on the dramatic lighting that you effected for the purposes of tonight. I like the black shirt with the black background and the lighting. I thought I was looking at a PBS documentary.
So you're telling me I have to do this from a hotel room all the time?
I'm just telling you, it's a good look. Stick with it.
Thank you.
All you need is a set of pearls around your neck.
That's it. That's it.
We need the frontline music.
That's right.
All right. And with this, meeting is adjourned.